Hey everyone, welcome to Cody Tarot. I'm your tarot reader, Cody. Today I'm going to be teaching you a tarot lesson. So I'm really excited about this. I just decided to do it tonight because my divination dice were like, try it out, like teach a lesson. So I know a lot of you have been asking for this on my Instagram. So I'm really excited to get into today's lesson plan. Today I'm going to be teaching you about one of the tarot cards. And this is going to be the intro to most of the video. So if you've seen this video before, you can just skip ahead to the actual reading of the card. But today we're going to be looking at a tarot card. We're going to be analyzing it based on what it looks like and then what those symbols can mean. And then we're going to be pulling that card in with 3 other cards and looking at the meaning and doing it in a spread of 3 cards. You guys can kind of see how to use a card in combination with cards, as well as what the card itself means on an individual basis. I would say that during these, I would highly recommend focusing on the method more than the content of what I'm saying. And I mean by that is look at how I'm figuring out how to interpret the card rather than what I'm actually saying about the card. By all means, feel free to copy my interpretations of the card. Like if you like something I say in a video and you want to use it in one of your readings, feel free to do that. But I would recommend finding your own personal associations with the cards and learning those to the best of your ability, because that's where it's really going to tap into your intuition. Because I kind of believe that intuition can be like a private world of meanings and events in your own mind, you know? And yeah, there is like collective intuition and all that good stuff. But when it comes to divination, it's a personal tool, and you're using that personal tool to help others. So it's really important to follow your own association. So when you guys look at a card, I would highly recommend looking at the card in and of itself, right? Looking at what you're actually seeing, and then what you're seeing, what does it remind you of? What does it make you think of? That's kind of the more intuitive, interpretive component of reading tarot, right? You're looking at all the visual images in the cards and you're seeing things pop out. You're noticing things. You're taking things from the cards. You're seeing patterns, stuff like that. And that's how you're getting those, that's how you're going to get the messages for your readings. One last thing that I want to say. Oh yeah, and then when you're doing that, when you're looking at cards and studying them, I would just take a notepad or a computer or like a page in your computer or something and type out the associations that you're picking up on, right? Because that's going to help you put those into writing. It's going to help you solidify more of those into your head, and you'll be able to pull on those more in readings in the future. But just know, no matter what reading you're doing with tarot cards, even if you've never learned how to do tarot before and you just don't know what you're doing, you can always lay out 3 cards, follow the method in these videos, and get interpretations for what you can read and pull out as a message. Another thing that I would want to say before starting this lesson is sometimes tarot feels like you're just making stuff up. I know that sounds weird, but sometimes that's the place where intuition comes from. Some people have more of a sense of knowing, like, oh, this is the truth. But oftentimes when it comes to divination, you're interpreting messages and you're associating different things with your own views and stuff like that. That's why every reader is different. If you get a tarot reading from one reader, it's not going to be like getting a tarot reading from another reader. All tarot readings are different. Everyone has different styles, and that's a beautiful thing, because if you want to read tarot for a living, that means you have clients that are specifically aligned to work with you, right? Versus another tarot reader, right? You could have one person who gets a tarot reading from one person and they don't like it. I know it's a little off topic, and then they go to another tarot reader and they love the reading, right? And it usually has to do with like the person's approach, how they're reading. You know, I always suggest people on my channel specifically, if you don't like one of my readings, go find another reader, because I might not be the right vibe for you, but someone else totally might be, and that's totally okay, right? Yeah, so today I'm going to be pulling from a traditional Rider-Waite deck with the most, like, I guess, traditional, right, meanings, or not meanings, but traditional imagery. And in some of the cards in this series, there's going to be nudity, so I'm going to warn you guys on that. I'll put 18 plus readings on the cards where we show the lover or the star or something like that. And, you know, we just won't monetize them or whatever. And yeah, so I really look forward to giving you guys these lessons, and I hope you enjoy them. I just finished the first one and it was a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to keep doing these for you if you guys like them. And I might just do them anyway, because I'm sure some people are going to want to see this, hopefully, right? Anyway, so I will catch you guys in the lesson, and thank you again for watching. And also, if you're like new to my channel and you're just seeing this tarot lesson, I also post pick a cards, usually about love and crushes and stuff like that. So if you're curious about that, I have that on my channel as well. So I will catch you guys in the lesson, and happy learning. Okay, so let's pick a card for you guys. The card for today is going to be the Death card. Cool. Okay, so I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit on this card. Put it in the middle of the screen. And actually, I'm going to move it down here. Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties, guys. Don't judge me. It's chaotic. I just want it closer to me so I can see it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the Death card. Let's take a look at this card and break it down, right? What do we see here? First of all, let's start with what we actually are seeing in the Death card. There's a skeleton. He's wearing armor. He has a black flag with a white rose on it. I actually don't know what type of flower this is. I'm just going to say it's a rose, right? Because that's what it looks like to me. Maybe it's a chrysanthemum or something like that. He's riding a white horse, which appears to have red eyes, although different types of tarot decks that are the original Rider-Waite are usually use different colors and stuff like that, so keep that in mind. And there's kind of like a bishop. It looks like a bishop pleading with him or praying to him. He's like has his hands outstretched and he's praying. And we also have this child who looks like he's turned away from death, like ignoring death, like not focusing on death. Then we have this other little kid, and I can't really quite see him. Let's look at him up close. It looks like he's just looking at death. Death is one of the more complicated cards as far as like people in it. So yeah, and then right down here below the horse, we have a guy who's buried or he's on the ground, and there's a blue blanket laid over him. So let's break down this card even further. What could all these things mean, right? If I was just going to read this card by itself, not in conjunction with any other cards, which I'm going to show you how you could read it next to other cards too. But particularly with the Death card, with the armor on the skeleton, you can assume that death or this figure that's coming with the horse and the black flag is well protected, right? This person is well protected, or this association is well protected. So you could even tell someone that even though they're going through a transformation in life, and that's going a little bit deeper with what the Death card kind of represents in a more traditional sense, is a transformation or an ending of one chapter, beginning of a new chapter. You can associate this armor with various different things, that this skeleton is protected, that death is protected, that nothing can change death. So you could even see this as like an inevitable ending, right? Also, I forgot to mention, we can look at the word in the card too, the word death. What does death bring up for you when you're looking at the card, right? Maybe death is something very scary for you, and maybe you've had like a few people die in your life and you're just dreading when you die, something like that. Maybe death doesn't bother you so much. You see it as a natural part of life, a natural flow, ebb and flow of life. And death is just another thing, another like adventure into the next life, right? Whatever your view on death is, this card does represent a transition, right? And it depends on how you view death in general, like what kind of religious context you believe in. So for a lot of people, the Death card, if you're more like one of my Christian viewers, or you subscribe to like typical Christianity, or any kind of religion that believes in a heaven after this earth. Maybe you don't believe in reincarnation. Maybe you don't believe in like spirits or mediums. You just believe you go to heaven and that's it, or you go to hell. Death can represent a transition to a higher level or a lower level of your existence. So if that's something that you're focused on, the Death card can mean ascending to a higher position, ascending to a place where you're free from burdens and responsibilities and the earthly plane, right? It can represent a transcendence from the earthly plane. If you're seeing it, like, for example, if it was paired with the Devil card or Temperance, that would be an indication of what direction this change would be going in. If you see it paired with the Devil card, that could be, a change where you're going into more struggles, you're going into more attachments, you're getting more sinking into the earthly plane as far as earthly attachments go, So that can be something, if you subscribe to those kind of I'm just going to call them traditional religious beliefs, but whatever, there's all sorts of different beliefs, and some are traditional and new age, whatever. Those beliefs that you have you could associate those with the death card when you're reading tarot. Other people that may believe in like reincarnation when they see the word death could assume that you're just entering a new phase of life and it's more neutral in general, or it could even indicate like a graduation phase for some people with the death card here. Also with the death card, I really think this bishop is interesting because it does, usually with tarot and especially the Rider-Waite deck, there's a lot of like, I think it's like Judeo-Christian symbolism, right? In the cards, we have the devil, we have temperance, the angel, we have angels all over the deck, we have, different things like that. It's really reminiscent of a time that is maybe not parallel to our current time, except in archetypes and symbolism, right? We still have those same archetypes in our current time, but they're not going to be represented as like with the same imagery that's on the traditional Rider-Waite deck, right? Okay, so with the bishop here, I do see someone who's a spiritual figure and they're praying to death in a sense. So they're praying to this thing that is like going to come for all of us no matter what. Like everyone dies, we all go through this transition, whether it's to another life, whether it's to heaven, whether it's to hell, whatever you believe in, whether it's just to a spirit realm where you can communicate with your loved ones through mediums or something like that. Everyone goes through this. And so you see this religious figure who's almost bowing and worshiping this particular transition in your life. So if death is coming up in a personal reading as something that's coming up in your life, with this bishop here, it's showing me that with this transition, it's almost blessed by authority or adults in essence. It's blessed by people who are spiritual in a sense. I feel like with the death card coming up, I would recommend someone, especially looking at this, especially if I'm in a reading and I'm noticing the bishop, right? Because tarot is all about what you're noticing. You get a whole bunch of visual cards and it's all about what you're noticing. With this bishop here, I would say, how do I put this? That spiritual figures and your spiritual community are supporting this transition, right? They're supporting this transition. They're worshiping this transition. They believe in you. And so I can see like a leader or someone who is a spiritual guide who would be someone to turn to during this transition, right? Remember, with the armor on death, I don't think death can be pierced by a sword or an arrow or anything like that. I don't think death can actually die. Death just is, right? And it's interesting, we see this like animated skeleton. I mean, this is the most revealed a card is in the tarot deck. We have the lovers who are both naked and the star card who's represented as a naked person. And that nudity is very symbolic of revealing yourself to the universe, is how I've always seen it. But with death here being a skeleton, right? There is no skin. There is no self and other. There is no sense of reveal. I mean, think about it. When you look at a skeleton, you don't feel embarrassed or ashamed, or you don't feel like aroused, essentially. Like when you look at a naked body, sometimes you feel arousal, you feel the sense of intimacy arising from within you. There's a feeling of wanting to merge with that body, something like that. Or being repelled by that body, whatever your specific experience is when you see nudity, right? Death is a skeleton. When you look at a skeleton, oftentimes people get this concept of like, whoa, cool, like a skeleton, especially some kids and stuff who are into kind of like darker Halloween aesthetics and stuff like that. Maybe you were that type of kid. But skeletons kind of have this kind of cool, almost like medical component to them. But there's not a feeling of arousal when you see a skeleton, right? There's not a feeling of seeing a person when you see a skeleton, which just indicates that death is kind of this thing that is not really, how do I put it? It's not really like there fully for you to understand and see and interact with, is kind of how I'm seeing this card too. So this could be a very intangible transition in the person's life. Now I want to get to this child with the white gown that's turned away. This in symbolism, what I could see this as is someone who is innocent and naive about death, and instead of worshiping the process of death, they turn themselves away from it and ignore it, right? Like, I don't want to pay attention to it, I don't want to see it, I don't want to think about it, right? So this could bring up questions that if I'm reading for like a younger client, for example, and I'm doing a tarot reading for a younger client, and I see the death card, if I see this young child turned away and ignoring death's approach, I would almost want to say that some younger person might not be either aware of the transition, or they might be ignoring the fact the transition is going to happen. It's like when you tell a child, like, if they're in like a specific school setting and they're in like first grade or something, and you tell them you're going to have to change schools or something like that, and they throw a temper tantrum, they throw a fit, there's no sense of acceptance, they're ignoring the change, they're fighting the change. That's kind of how I see with this child right here that's turned away. And then we have the more innocent child, the youngest child. It's almost like a little baby, right? In this card. Let me show you real quick up close so you can see it. There's almost this little baby here, right? And the baby doesn't really know what's going on, right? They don't have the sense of consciousness to understand the permanence or impermanence of change itself. So this baby is kind of just seeing death innocently. So you could even judge, if you're working with a client and you're reading tarot for them, you could see like what is their age range or what is their maturity, right? I normally don't do this in readings, unless I'm just trying to clarify things for people's worries or concerns. But I would look at how the person reacts to the death card when they see it. That'll tell you what area of this like level of age range the person is in as far as their maturity in handling death, right? We can kind of see this where it's like someone just doesn't even know what's going on. Like, oh, the death card, like, what's that? You can see that kind of innocence with people. They might be more prepped for the change, or the change might pass them over without any kind of noticeability in their life. So you can kind of see this in people. And also, you can also use court cards for this indication, right? If you get a page next to the death card, you can see that the person is viewing death more innocently. If you get a knight or a queen, or I would just say a knight, you could see that this person might even be ignoring death a little bit. And even with the horse in death too, they could be the initiator of change. That would be another indication if a knight card was here, because the knights are all on horses, the death is on a horse. They could be like the initiator of change as well. But also equally with getting a knight, they could be ignoring it. If you get like a king or a queen, someone who's like a mature court card, that could indicate someone who is worshiping this process or understands it's like a sacred rite of passage, and they're in awe of it, right? They understand the awe and the mystery of it, that kind of thing. We also have death down here with the guy laying on the ground covered in a blanket. This in general, with death walking over this guy and approaching these people, it can indicate with the death card, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it can indicate the loss of a loved one or the loss of someone in your life. This can also indicate putting a topic or subject to rest, right? Maybe not necessarily for good, but it talks about putting something to rest. So something in your life needs to be put to rest for a little bit so it can like kind of incubate either in the back of your mind or turn into a memory of some sort. But yeah, there's a feeling of letting something go, putting something to rest. Yeah, let's look at this card a little bit further. I don't think I pointed out all the images in this card. I mean, we also have the white rose, which I can talk about in a second. We also have the sun shining over the other edge of the card. I'll show you that right there. And if you are familiar with tarot, those two towers in the back where the sun's shining over, those are the towers of the moon card in the traditional Rider-Waite. They're the same exact looking towers of the moon, and the sun is shining in that direction over that horizon, right? So you can even imagine... like the sun shining on the moonlight, or a sense of illumination even. And there's even like the idea with the sun there right by those towers, and then seeing the moon card on the other side. Like say you're on the opposite side of these towers looking over here, there would be this vibe of like being able to see the moon being illuminated on one side, the mystery of it all, and then on this side, kind of the realization or the epiphany, if that makes sense. Let's get into the last thing I want to point out in the symbolism, which is the white rose and the black flag. The black flag and the white rose, I normally don't read too much into these in the interpretation, except for the sense of innocence that I kind of feel the white rose represents. It can represent that the change could be an innocent one in general, but with it being surrounded by black, and this being one of the few cards that is typically represented by black and white colors, other cards being the High Priestess, the Chariot. I would even throw the moon in there as far as that triad of four, because we do have those towers in the moon card. I think all four of these are interlinked, and I still don't understand quite yet how they're all interlinked, but I definitely believe that they are interlinked. But with the white rose, it represents purity, or a sense of... Also with the rose here, it can represent like almost like the lotus flower, like blooming, or the present moment, right? That everything's changing moment to moment, and death is but a moment. That's something else I could interpret from death here. Death is also the 13th card, so if you're into numbers or numerology, that boils down to a 4, which can talk about stability, stuff like that. And then 13 also has some connotations in popular culture, sometimes viewed as an unlucky number. I know certain hotels and stuff won't even mark their 13th floor, or they'll just have the 12th floor goes into the 14th, something like that. So some cultures believe 13 is like an unlucky number. So you could even bring that into your interpretation, but that's pretty much all I have for you guys on the death card as far as like what I'm seeing offhand. There are some other factors in this card, like there looks like there is, it's like a spiral right there on the bottom, and it looks like a crown right there. So it's interesting, with the crown and the guy on the ground, you can imagine that's his crown, and you can even see that as the death of authority for a more spiritual authority. You have this spiritual authority that is like praying to death. So you can see a transformation from someone who is more materialistic oriented to someone who's more spiritual oriented. So death can indicate that spiritual transition as well. The sun in the background rising or setting, depending on how you view it, could indicate just in general a transition, right? I also kind of associate the sun setting or rising with the first house and the 7th house in astrology, right? So this might be a very personal signification for a lot of people. Now I'm gonna pull 3 cards and I'm gonna put them on either side of the death card. Just for sake of examples, I'm not taking reversals in this example, but I'm gonna be pulling 2 different cards, and we'll be going into, in this part of the lesson, we'll be going into basically how the death card applies next to other cards. And I could give you guys kind of like a sample reading. So we have the 10 of Pentacles and we have the 4 of Pentacles. So 2 Pentacle cards. And don't worry if you don't understand some of the meanings of these 2 cards yet. Say I haven't posted a video about these 2 cards at all or anything like that. I'm just going to get into the general overview of the card. And I don't even know if in the future I'm going to get to all the videos for every single card. But what I do know is you can learn the process of figuring out how to interpret a card through my way of interpreting it and how I'm pulling interpretations and stuff like that. You can use that method for yourself to see things in the card and understand things about the different cards in the deck. And then just take a little notepad and write them down, jot them down, and pretty soon you'll have all these meanings for the cards and you'll be combining them, and you'll be a like super proficient reader in no time, like, most likely, you know. Yeah, so with the 10 of Pentacles and the 4 of Pentacles, let me take a minute to look at this. Okay, here's what I'm seeing from this right off the top of my head. And remember, when you do a reading, it's gonna change moment to moment to moment. Every time you do a spread for someone, you might think of entirely different interpretations for the cards. I mean, this is a form of divination. You're meant to look into the images on the cards and pull out messages, right? It's not necessarily, I mean, some people do this and that's fine, but it's not necessarily, I think you would get more accurate readings with the visual component like I'm mentioning, but it's not necessarily like, just, oh, 10 of Pentacles is like money and family, death is like a change, and 4 of Pentacles is like be conserving with your money. So it's like, and you could read it like this, like your family is going through a major transformation where you're gonna have to be more frugal with your money. That is an interpretation you could pull for these cards, right? And that's more like book meanings and like understanding what the cards are on an intellectual level. But for me, if I'm looking at these cards, right, I'm noticing things in the imagery, right? So first I'm noticing that the 10 of Pentacles, there's a big city in this card, right? There is a city of like, you're in an archway and there's a building outside you. And I'm noticing the symbolism or the similarity in the 4 of Pentacles, where there's a city in the background of the person, right? So in this way, I'm really noticing that offhand, and I want to bring that into the reading. I'm also noticing how they're both Pentacles cards. So that's something to pay attention to, what suit it is. It just talks about more like the subject matter of what the reading is in general. And one thing that I'm seeing is there's a huge family here, right? And there's just a feeling of being in the city is kind of how I'm seeing this card. Now with the death card here, I am noticing the bishop. I'm kind of stuck on this idea of a spiritual transition when I'm looking at this death card. And I'm also noticing the crown in the 4 of Pentacles and also the death card. So if you look here, this guy's wearing a crown, and the crown down here right by this guy is on the ground and he's dead, right? So death, I'm also pulling from my own interpretation of what I believe in when it comes to death and rebirth. And I believe sometimes when you have a death, it just indicates something new coming in or of just being reborn. So it's a feeling of being reborn or a major transition in life for being reborn, right? I'm also taking imagery from the flower, the blooming, right? This is just another spot of your life that's just blooming into a more open, innocent being, right? This is just going to make you more in touch with the nature of reality in the present moment. So with the 10 of Pentacles in the city in the background, and I'm seeing that there's all these different people in this card, right? There's an old man with dogs and two people talking in the background. And then in this card, there's just only one person, right? Now he still has his crown. Like I mentioned, I point out the crown. So let me break down how I'm interpreting this. First, with the city to this city, like I mentioned first, you're going from a community or being enmeshed in a large community. And then with this guy standing outside the city, you're going into a more independent area of life, away from that community is how I'm reading it. So I'm just using the word community. This could quite literally, if you're talking about someone moving or that question, if the person asks the question like, oh, am I going to move sometime soon? Something like that. The question would be, yes, you're moving from a more crowded, populated area to a less populated area just outside of a populated area is what I would describe, because the cities are still in the background and this person is closed off to themselves. I would tell the client, there's going to be a period of your life where you move into a more isolated existence away from the city, or you're moving from a more isolated existence away from the environment or the culture that you're a part of, but you're going to be close by. This would be like someone who could drive back and forth to work, but still wants to have the freedom to be in the suburbs or the country without having to, live in town, something like that. So that's how I would bring the city component into it. With the crown here, I would say that you have been feeling very dead and lifeless in your life with the guy with the crown here. But with you being up here and the crown on your head, it's like you're reclaiming your sovereignty. You're reclaiming that crown for yourself. And so one thing that I would bring up in this reading is that this transformation is going to be an extremely positive one, because this crown that's on the ground right here is going to be on your actual head right here. Now, I will tell the person that with the typical Four of Pentacles, I usually bring this up in most readings, and this is just one of my interpretations. This person looks closed off, like they're hoarding these pentacles, or they're keeping to themselves. So I would tell this person that you might become either more financially independent, or on the flip side, you might just be a little more closed off from people in general. But I would tell them you're reclaiming your crown, and that's the important part in this reading, right? Also with the spiritual bishop here that I'm noticing, right? Remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be patterns in all the cards, but I'm noticing that bishop in this reading. I would tell this person that they are going through a spiritual transformation, right? That they are going to be more spiritual at the other end of this transition in their life. So if the question was are they moving to a new city, or where are they moving? Like their home life is up in the air, something like that. I would tell them, you had a solid home life in the city, but right now, the thing is the universe is pushing this change on you because you've been dead and lifeless and you've lost your crown. Maybe you've lost your authority to your family, or maybe you've lost your authority to the community that you live in and you want to reclaim that authority, right? So with the death card here, you're transitioning to a more spiritual transition with this Four of Pentacles, away from the city, reclaiming your authority. So I would tell this person in the most simple terms, you're moving out of the city to a remote location to reclaim your spirituality and your authority in your own life, where you can make autonomous decisions on your own, where you have control and agency over your own life. So I would tell this person, this is a really good thing that's happening. You're going to go through a transformation where you're going to become more autonomous. You're going to become someone who makes their own decisions for themselves and is the ruler in their own life. This is a strong vibe of transitioning into a phase of independence. So that is a way I would read and combine multiple cards in a reading for you guys. So I'm going to end this little lesson here. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it gave you a little indication of the death card specifically, and also how that death card can be used in a sample reading, so you can see how to tie in different elements with other cards. Thank you guys again for watching this lesson. And you know what? I will try to do more of these if people like them. Hopefully this was fun for you guys. I know a lot of you were talking about wanting to be taught things, and especially on my Instagram community, you guys have been asking about like teaching lessons and stuff like that about the cards and stuff like that. So I thought I thought I'd just give it a try and see what happens tonight, and see if you guys like this content. Maybe do it as a side project. But yeah, so anyway, thank you again for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.